Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Can you believe it? It's election time in Canada, and the crowd is going completely mild.
Yes, of course. And if you feel strongly, you might write a letter to the editor. Jordan, I was going to ask, do you see anybody putting out policies right now that would be helpful for business?
Well, one policy that's kind of interesting, and it's not specifically for business yet, and it seems like the Conservatives are trying to do sort of an announcement today, so I suspect there's some stuff coming for small business in the next few weeks. But on the weekend, Scheer announced a across-the-board income tax cut, and he did it quite cleverly. He talked about cutting the rate paid in the lowest bracket, which does help everyone because, of course, if you make $50,000 a year, you'll pay less tax in that little section of the bracket that's covered. And if you make $500,000 a year, you'll pay a little bit less tax because of that bracket. And it's a really good policy. It's a fair policy. It covers every single income taxpayer. I had to have a chuckle. I'm just on the CBC website this morning, and they tried to debunk this. Scheer called it a universal income tax cut. The CBC said it is not universal because 9 million Canadians don't pay income tax. Well, when the CBC is kind of, stretching that far to try to poo-poo a conservative announcement, it's a pretty good one because that's some of the most ludicrous so-called fact-checking I've ever seen.
Wow, yeah, if you're not paying income tax, yes, it doesn't matter what the rate is.
It's not universal, Jim, because you're not paying income tax. It's kind of, it's so dumb, and I don't know why the CBC, I don't know if they don't think twice about these things or actually, have any common sense, but that's the kind of stuff that makes all the Twitter conspiracy theories go wild about the CBC being in Trudeau's pockets, and they get $1 billion a year or whatever from the Trudeau government, and it's just such stupid. It's such stupid analysis. It's almost unbelievable that it exists.
Well, yes, and then you would say, well, then obviously there's a bias if you put out a report like that saying people who don't use something, well, then how can you say that they're getting a benefit from it?
Yeah, well, exactly. So, and they never address hey, wait, 9 million out of 28 million tax filers don't pay income tax? 9 million? That's what, a quarter of the entire country doesn't pay income tax? Is that really what we want? Shouldn't everyone pay a little bit, maybe?
I think maybe they're talking about kids. Do we have 9 million kids?
Tax filers. No, 9 million out of the 28 million tax filers.
Oh. Yes, but I guess if you're on welfare or
exactly. And that's why you haven't met the minimum income threshold or whatever where taxes start. But, instead of maybe taking a step back and saying, 9 million, is that more than last year or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and seeing what the trend is, just kind of, it's pretty funny. The way this campaign is unfolding is very bitter, very personal. There doesn't seem to be a lot of policy coming. The Greens have put out a platform, but it kind of landed with a thud. Scheer's trying to put out an announcement today, but it seems like the media is more hyped up on, social media posts from 10, 15 years ago rather than the actually exploring the policy. It reminds me of that Kim Campbell quote that, elections are a terrible time to discuss policy.
Yeah, and she was so horribly right. I mean, I want to know, what are you going to do to create jobs in Canada? What are you and small business is, the big job generator across the country. 70% plus of jobs come from small business, but you never see anybody cutting ribbons when a mom and pop office or shop opens up. It's some mega factory where they've got nothing but tax breaks to open it up. And how much are they really contributing, to the community?
Yeah, I will say, the level of government that does a pretty good job of recognizing that small business are the municipalities. So you'll often see mayors at local businesses cutting ribbons and, participating. That to me makes, that's obvious, and it shows that, municipal governments maybe have a better sense being closer to the ground of just how important small business is. But let me give you an example. So, 70% of Canada's construction industry, are businesses constituted like ICBA members. We're part of an overarching group called Merit Canada. So we put out a Merit Canada on behalf of all these organizations across the country, put out a platform, basically a 5-pillar plan on how to grow the Canadian economy in the next 10 years. And, it got zero coverage. But, what kind of bothers me is if I'd found some sort of crazy quote from some random NDPer in the middle of nowhere, and put it out, it would have gotten, all sorts of stories, and the leaders would have been asked about it. And this is what's wrong with the politics in this country right now today, and this election, why this election campaign is so distasteful for so many of us is, no one's, the media don't want to talk about ideas. They're falling for the gotcha politics. And, you have all these great ideas and suggestions on how to make the country legitimately better and more prosperous. But, they bore the media and, it becomes about, some lake of fire comment, or, whatever.
Well, I call it
the
lost,
years ago.
I call it the lost dog at the airport syndrome. That was Global TV's lead story one day. There's a lost dog at the airport running around. I went, wow. Now, is it affecting flights, or is it out on the runway and planes can't take off? No, it's just running around out there. Everything's normal. So, we'll discuss what those 5 points that Merit Canada believes would help our economy right after the break.
Bateman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, what were the 5 points Merit Canada would like to see to help improve the economy?
Well, we discussed some issues around investment, trade, and growth, around open and fair government procurement, responsible resource development, sustainable infrastructure, and then skills training education. But the two I'd love to pull out and talk about a little bit more are responsible resource development and sustainable infrastructure. And essentially, what the construction companies, most of which are family-owned or small businesses, what they're saying is it's becoming so difficult to get responsible resource development projects approved, whether it's a pipeline, and pipelines get the most kind of scrutiny, but whether it's a pipeline or a mine, or any kind of resource extraction, it's so hard to get those approved that you're actually, hamstringing our economy, and you're keeping us from being able to build the kind of projects and infrastructure necessary to serve those things. So you're actually putting people out of work. And you think of Justin Trudeau and, the so-called No Pipelines Act, which essentially will make it so incredibly difficult to ever approve another pipeline to Tidewater, and what that means for Alberta and for Canadian prosperity. It's bad. The unscientific tanker ban in northern BC. It sounds great to ban tankers. The problem is you're only banning Canadian tankers. U.S. tankers still ply those waters, no problem, every single day. dozens of them, from Alaska and Washington State. But for some reason, we decided that, in Canada, we shouldn't have those, we shouldn't offer those out. Those kind of rules need to change. I've yet to see how the Trudeau government can't really justify it, except as a way to try to pander to, some of the environmental vote that's slipping away to the Green Party and NDP.
Now, taking a look at the platforms that the NDP and the Greens and the Liberals have put out, anything that looks pro-business, pro-jobs?
No, the Greens is a disaster. It would absolutely, hamstring the Canadian economy, would put hundreds of thousands of people out of work, and is, basically pie in the sky thinking. The NDP platform, quite similar. They're trying to out-left one another. The Liberal platform, they haven't bothered to cost, so at least to the credit of the other major parties, they've been sending their platforms to the Parliamentary Budget Office, which is an independent office of the Parliament, which costs these things out and gives people kind of a sense as to, what kind of tax revenues you need in order to fund them. Every other party has had their platform sent in there and had portions costed, except the Federal Liberal Party. They refused to do it. Their contribution, of course, in the past 4 years has been to run up massive deficits far higher than they expected, far longer than they expected, all while Canadian confidence starts to trend downward and it seems like we're headed into a recession. So, they've mismanaged the economy during the good times. Not sure how you could trust them to manage the economy properly during the bad times.
Well, everybody made fun of that Trudeau quote before the last election, the budget will balance itself. Well, obviously, it's not going to balance if he's in charge of it.
No, the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office, and this is not the Conservative Party, this is not Jordan Bateman, it's not the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, it's not the Fraser Institute, this is the Parliamentary Budget Office, says maybe 2040, maybe 2041, but it may the budget may be balanced given what Trudeau is baking into it. So, are you willing to go into debt for another 20 years, passing on the costs of infrastructure and social programs that we're consuming now to future generations simply because we're not willing to make a tough choice? And we're not willing to punish politicians who go out and use our money to try to buy our votes. So it's pretty disgusting when you think about it.
Well, the late Joe Oliver, who was the finance minister, said, "This isn't my problem, it's the grandkids' problem," and then he was rebuked and told to retract that statement. But I have a feeling he was telling us the truth.
Yeah, Joe Oliver's still alive. I think you're thinking Jim Flaherty.
Oh, I'm thinking of Jim Flaherty. But Oliver, I think, is the one who said it'll be our grandkids' problem.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And, you want to pay your own way. Like, we wouldn't want to leave, personally, you wouldn't want to leave massive debts to your children, your grandchildren. You want to leave them in a fine footing when we shuffle off this mortal coil. But that's not Trudeau economics. He just continues to rack up massive amounts of debt. Something like $15 billion in spending promises in August alone. No plan to balance the budget. No desire for any kind of fiscal responsibility or accountability. And in the end, no prime minister rules forever. He will be defeated, if not this time, then the next time, or whenever. The next person who comes in is going to have a 1990s-like problem on their hands where they'll have to really address these massive deficits, much like Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin had to do in the mid-90s.
Well, we've heard that People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier will now be allowed in the debates. If Trudeau's not going to show up, at least there won't be an empty chair there, I guess, or what?
I'm actually not a fan of putting Bernier in. I don't think he has any chance to win any seat anywhere, not even his own. I think it's kind of strange to put him in, but I think the election commission seems to have very deep Liberal ties. Clearly, it benefits the Liberals to have him there because there's only one English language debate, and now you've added another voice into it. If you've got something like 5 party leaders and 5 moderators, that's less and less time for Justin Trudeau to be put on the spot for his very damaging policies, which I suspect is exactly what the Liberals want. Get him in and out of there as quickly as possible.
What was your impression of him not showing up for the last debate?
Oh, he's a chicken. He didn't want to come in and defend his policies to Canadians. And I find that cowardly and unaccountable, but seems to be par for the course for a guy who claim to want to do politics differently, if he is doing it differently, he's doing it much worse. Can you imagine the outrage there would have been? The people would have been burning down the place if Stephen Harper hadn't shown up for a debate like that. But because it's Justin Trudeau and, people, I think quite, very low of his intelligence level, everyone kind of gives him a pass. It's shocking. Canada deserves so much better when it comes to elected officials and the people leading us. We deserve the brightest of the bright and people who genuinely want to make a real difference for all Canadians, not just for the ones who give them money at election time. I'm hopeful that this election, even though it seems like it's stuck in quicksand right now, that eventually Canadians send a strong message saying, you have to keep your promises when you run for office.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, is there a poll or a survey that finds we're not all economically optimistic in British Columbia?
Yeah, Insights West just put out their latest kind of Canadian economic snapshot, and 64% of BC residents, 62% feel a recession is imminent within the next 12 months. This is a number that has been trending upward in recent months. While British Columbians generally think their household finances are pretty good right now, they do sense that something bad is coming down the pipe. I would say they're correct. Something bad is coming down the pipe, and it's being created by John Horgan and Carol James's tax and spend policies and lack of fiscal responsibility. We saw a budget update come out last week. It shows that the surplus has been whittled down by $120 million in the first quarter. That actually disguises the truth. Carol James had to take $300 million out of contingency to even get to that 129 level. So in a year where there were no fire or floods or other unexpected expenses, she already had to take $300 million out of her contingency just to try to, keep the budget in the black. So retail sales are flat. Real estate is down. Consumer confidence is down, which is going to further push down those retail sales, because if you're not feeling confident about the economy, you're not going to go out and buy that new car or that new fridge or renovate your house. Winter is coming. We've been saying it for a long time at ICBA, and I hope that people are making preparations for what could be a real downturn.
Is it disturbing to have a finance minister smile as she says, my tax policies have helped drive down home equity?
Yeah, I think that's a quote that won't age well, to be honest. I think that eventually, if the economy turns sour, people will start looking at their net worth and saying, wait a minute, the day before the NDP were elected, I was worth 25% more than I am today. That will be a very difficult thing for them to overcome. People generally don't piece it together. Everyone wants someone else to sell their house at a cut rate, but not have it affect theirs. That's just not the way the economics work. So, yeah, if I was a finance minister, I wouldn't be bragging about sucking billions out of the economy. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it was pointed out to me in the cities of Vancouver and Toronto, the real estate industry is actually a major economic driver when you look at the people employed in it, construction, retail. You have to furnish new places. When you kill that business, you're not just making houses drop in price. You're killing jobs. Is that an accurate assessment?
That is 100% fair, and we're already starting to see it in construction. It's beginning to contract just a little bit. It will further contract as residential housing starts to drop off, it takes away real jobs from real families. And again, it's that kind of spiraling thing, in their hunger to, trample on people who own homes. The NDP are actually, trampling on the entire economy as a whole and on the provincial treasury. So it'll be very interesting to see, they may be able to weather the storm for the next few months and keep this year's budget in balance. But, their high rates of tax, their, $6 billion worth of tax increases, billions of dollars more in spending, it all comes home to roost eventually, and usually when there's an economic downturn. So, buckle up, BC. The 2/3 of you who feel like there's a recession coming, I'm with you.
Oh, also, Trudeau speculated that he might bring in a speculation tax of 1% across the country like BC's. Why should Canadians be punished if they have a second home? Especially because it's most likely a cottage or a cabin, or as they say on the Atlantic coast, the camp.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more popular. There's nothing more popular when you have a house with a blue door than to tax houses with red doors. Look, it's the politics of envy. And, I read these stories of these people in Belcarra who are losing family, cottages that have no rental possibilities whatsoever. They don't even have running water. I read about, the people in, I think it was Langford, who have the Tulip House, Oak Bay, I think it was, the Tulip House, famous for these beautiful flowers. They live there 6 months a year. They're having to sell it because they are, quote unquote, evil speculators. There's a couple who has lived between 3 and 6 months a year every year for 40 years. In the valley, they're having to sell their house because they're evil speculators. It's just the politics of envy, and it's something that, has not been pushed back against by, regular people. And I think most of us who, only own one home, just try to keep your heads down and, try to get through this without the NDP noticing us. But look, this is not creating more housing. It's not like, the rental demand has changed. There's still a huge demand for rent. And when they run out of houses, to tax with speculation and to force people to move out of so that they can sell or rent to someone else, they're going to have to look for other things. And this is a slippery slope when it comes to eroding private property rights.
Jordan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.